Welcome to your Daily 5 for Tuesday, December 26th, 2023. I was going to say anticipated, but that's probably the long marketed first part of Zack Snyder's Star Wars becoming his own thing film, Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, what a miserable title, has been released and is now out there on Netflix. I don't know when the second part is coming, but my understanding is it's not that far off. And I actually watched this and got Lando to watch it because I was really interested in what this would be. I don't know if there wasn't the background of it originally starting as a Star Wars project, I'm not sure I would have watched it. But the fact that this started off as a Star Wars pitch and then when it was rejected got changed into what Zack Snyder is calling an, quote, original idea. Not that I think that that's really accurate because this is so ripped off of Star Wars. It's nearly, it's nearly a litigation-worthy entry, but, it's got enough changes, they won't be sued over it or anything like that. But I was curious, because Zack Snyder, to me, is a very good visual filmmaker. Generally, I find that his narratives are okay to weak. I don't know that I hate any of his movies, I just choose not to revisit some of his movies, not because I found them to be really terrible, just because I don't feel like they're worth revisiting. Rebel Moon Part 1 falls into an interesting category because I actually think I would revisit this film before I would revisit any of the actual legitimate Star Wars sequels, meaning the last three movies. Force Awakens, Last Jedi, or Rise of Skywalker. Certainly the first and third I have never gone back to and never will. Last Jedi is such a weird entry that I have rewatched that a couple of times. It's still not necessarily a movie I like, but it does fascinate me, I have to admit. It's a very polarizing film, and so it does generate some interest in me. But if you were to put this movie and those three in front of me and say, which would you like to watch? It would be Last Jedi or Rebel Moon, and most times it would probably be Rebel Moon because it is, I don't even know if you call this a spoiler-free review because, and we'll talk about it on Friday because Lando watched it, which is a rarity. But the story is so familiar. It is so recycled. It is such a paint-by-numbers sci-fi epic, or whatever you want to use the phrase for that I don't even know that you can spoil it because there's nothing here that any science fiction fan who's watched any modern science fiction movie, or an older one or a newer one, anything, miniseries, anything, there's nothing here that you won't recognize. There was nothing in this movie outside of one moment that I found was, oh, I'm surprised by this, or it took me, I went, oh, I didn't expect that. Everything seemed predictable. And the one moment that wasn't, I don't think the reason it surprised me is because of good writing. I think it's because it was otherwise such a paint-by-numbers movie that when this one thing happened that was unexpected, it's because everything else had been slotted in exactly as I expected it to be, and this one thing wasn't. But I don't know if that's really intentional or if it's because I became sort of numb to the story and I just sort of assumed I knew everything that was happening. So listening to this, it sounds like a bad review, but I'm not going to say I didn't like this movie. I actually had a good time with it because I went in and knowing it was a Zack Snyder film, I went, okay, as long as the visuals are good, I'm really not going to care if the story isn't. And the visuals were good. I actually enjoyed the look and the motion of this film. He didn't overdo slow motion as he often does. I think he has some great action set pieces, which he typically does. I thought some of the character designs were actually really, really good. There's some really small moments and some alien designs that are fascinating and interesting, and I would actually like to see more of. So I will watch the second part of this. But again, don't come into this expecting any type of new ground storytelling-wise. There is none. You will know exactly where this movie is going. You will know what most of the characters are going to do, and 98% of the time, you will predict it correctly. So if you come in and you're expecting it to really be a brand new IP, it is not. If you come in and you check your brain on the storytelling part and you just want a good time with something that looks good with people jumping around in great shape, leaping in slow motion, then you're probably going to enjoy it, as I did. Again, this is not anything new in terms of the narrative. It's not. But the the visuals are very good. I was captivated by what I was seeing. I didn't really need to remember it later because I already knew it, basically, the story. But I think it's a very successful film in terms of a popcorn flick. So again, Rebel Moon Part 1, as long as you got your expectations set correctly, you can have a lot of fun with this one. Later.